Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling, well, a giant of thought, Socrates, often called the father of Western philosophy.
Right, but here's the immediate challenge. The man himself left zero written records. Nothing.
Exactly. So everything we think we know comes through others, mainly his star student, Plato.
And that's our task today, isn't it? Trying to sift through those accounts, the legends, the interpretations, to find the real Socrates. We want to understand the man, his pretty revolutionary methods, and maybe why his ideas still matter so much now.
It's a fascinating starting point, too, context-wise. Socrates, born around 472 BC in Athens, he wasn't alone in this focus on morality.
No, not at all. It's kind of amazing, actually. You've got Socrates pushing for systematic moral education in Athens. At roughly the same time, Confucius is doing very similar work in China, and you have Ezra doing it in Jerusalem, all in the 5th century BC.
That global focus on virtue is incredible, but Socrates himself, his background was different, wasn't it?
Very different. Confucius, Ezra, they came from more, let's say, elite or priestly circles. Socrates, middle class. His dad was a stonemason, his mom a midwife.
So not exactly aristocratic.
Not at all. Our sources suggest he might have been, well, maybe the first truly classless person in history, defined by his mind, not his social standing.
And a real Athenian through and through, loved the city.
Absolutely. He only ever left Athens, apparently, to fight for it. He served as a hoplite, foot soldier.
Right, in places like Potidaea, Amphipolis. And there are some amazing stories about his time as a soldier, aren't there?
Oh, incredible accounts. Alcibiades, the famous general who knew him well, he talks about Socrates' almost unbelievable toughness,
How so?
like walking barefoot in the freezing snow wearing just a thin cloak. Seemed totally indifferent to the cold, the hardship.
Yeah.
Alcibiades said his sheer presence, his fearlessness, actually made enemy soldiers want to avoid him on the battlefield.
Wow, the philosopher as this incredibly hardy soldier, it's quite a picture.
It is, and it makes his famous appearance even more striking.
Ah, yes, his looks. He wasn't exactly known for being handsome.
Definitely not.
Hmm.
Descriptions mention him being bearded, flat-nosed, kind of bug-eyed, thick lips,
Mm-hmm.
often compared to Silenus, the mythical satyr figure.
No, ugly joker, yeah.
But Socrates, in typical fashion, he sort of leaned into it. There's that great story where he challenges a handsome young guy, Critobulus, to a beauty contest.
Seriously, how did he argue that?
With irony, of course. He defended his bulging eyes, saying they gave him better peripheral vision, and his upturned nostrils, better for smelling things from all directions.
Classic Socrates. Turning a perceived flaw into a virtue through logic.
Exactly. And that indifference, it wasn't just about looks, it extended to his whole way of life. Mineral possessions, thin clothes.
He wasn't interested in stuff. He was interested in talking to people.
Precisely. He'd wander through the agora, the marketplace, packed with goods, and apparently say how many things I can do without.
Such a great line.
It really sums it up. He genuinely seemed to believe that needing less, maybe even embracing poverty, was a shortcut to self-mastery, taming the body to free the soul.
Okay, but this brings us right back to that central problem. If he wrote nothing, and we're relying on others, how much is really Socrates and how much is, say, Plato?
That's the million drachma question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a huge challenge. We do have Xenophon's accounts.
Right.
And Xenophon seems to have recorded him pretty faithfully, capturing his personality, his actions. But, well, the analysis suggests Xenophon maybe missed the deeper philosophical complexity. He wasn't quite on the same intellectual level.
And then there's Plato.
Then there's Plato, a genius in his own right, founded the academy.
Yeah.
But as Plato developed his own complex philosophy, especially his theory of forms, he increasingly seems to use Socrates as a mouthpiece. Some sources even call Socrates Plato's ventriloquist's doll in the later dialogues.
So Plato's putting his own ideas into Socrates' mouth.
It looks that way, increasingly over time, which is why, for us trying to find the historical Socrates, the really early Platonic dialogues are key. They're generally seen as the most authentic picture we have.
Okay, so focusing on that early picture, let's talk about his big philosophical move. What did he actually change? Before him, you had the pre-Socratics.
Right. And they were obsessed with the cosmos. Cosmology, cosmogony, basically what's the universe made of, how did it start?
Like Bailey's thinking magnets have souls, or Heraclitus with his river you can't step in twice.
Exactly. All focused outwards on the physical world. Socrates looked at all that and essentially said, the cosmos is mute. It can't answer my questions.
So he just ditched cosmology.
Pretty much. He made this radical turn inward, towards the human being, the soul, the inner world. Why? because people can answer questions. Or at least they can try.
And this whole shift was driven by a core conviction, wasn't it? About happiness.
Absolutely. His fundamental belief was that the path to happiness wasn't wealth or power, but education. Specifically, education that makes you virtuous. For Socrates, virtue and wisdom were basically the same thing.
Which leads us straight to his famous method, the Socratic method.
Also called the elenchus, or dialectic. Fancy terms, but it's essentially relentless cross-examination, asking questions, probing answers, digging for the truth. Aristotle actually credited him as the first to really zero in on the importance of definitions.
So he wouldn't start with some grand theory. He'd start with a basic question like, what is justice? Or what is courage?
Exactly. Take the dialogue lashes, which is all about courage. A general might start with a common-sense definition. Courage is standing your ground in battle.
Seems reasonable.
But Socrates immediately starts poking holes. What about a strategic retreat? Is that cowardly or sometimes courageous? What about moral courage, facing down injustice? Does the definition cover that?
So the point wasn't really to give the answer.
No. The point was often to show the person they didn't know what they thought they knew. To reveal that common assumptions, accepted wisdom, are often flawed or incomplete.
That connects to the Oracle of Delphi story, right? Saying no one was wiser than Socrates.
Precisely. Socrates was baffled by this, apparently. He went around questioning supposed wise men, only to find they couldn't defend their beliefs under scrutiny. So he concluded his only wisdom was knowing he was ignorant.
And that spurred him on.
It became his mission to constantly examine himself and others, to expose ignorance as the first step towards true knowledge, towards virtue.
It's fascinating how some sources link this demand for precision in thought to, well, to architecture, specifically the Parthenon.
Yeah, that's a really neat connection made in the analysis. Athens, in Pericles' time, Socrates' time, was undergoing this massive building program funded by the Delian League, the Parthenon being the crown jewel.
An architectural marvel.
And Socrates was apparently fascinated by the visual refinements used, things like enhasis.
Enhasis?
It's where they make columns, or even the temple platform, slightly curved, imperceptibly bowed outwards.
Why do that? Why not just make them straight?
Because perfectly straight lines can actually look slightly concave or weak to the human eye from a distance. These tiny calculated curves create the illusion of perfect straightness and strength. It gives the building a sense of life.
So it's a deliberate imperfection to achieve visual perfection.
Exactly. And it required incredibly precise mathematical calculations. Socrates saw this illusion in art and realized, look, abstract math isn't just theoretical. It has practical power to shape perception, to achieve a kind of perfection.
And you're saying that precision relates to his ethics.
It's a powerful analogy. If achieving visual perfection in stone required such mathematical rigor, imagine the precision needed to achieve moral perfection in the human soul. That discipline, that clarity, it carries right over into his moral philosophy.
Okay, let's dive into that morality. It was pretty radical, starting with his view of body and soul.
It really was an ethical watershed, a simple, stark division. The body, mortal, temporary, driven by selfish needs and desires. The soul, immortal, eternal, and its true purpose is the pursuit of virtue, of justice.
And the fate of the soul depended on how you lived.
Completely. The soul of a just person, Socrates believed, was safe. It would go to be with God after death. This belief gave him, kind of detachment from worldly fears, even death itself.
Which allowed him to propose his most challenging moral rule, the one that really flew in the face of tradition.
You mean his absolute stance on retaliation?
Yeah, that core principle.
It's astonishingly radical for his time, even for ours, perhaps. He stated quite clearly, "It is never right to do wrong or to requite wrong with wrong, or when we suffer evil to defend ourselves by doing evil in return."
Never return wrong for wrong.
Never. Think about the standard Greek view. An eye for an eye was baseline. The poet Hesiod actually argued you should return evil twice over. Socrates said no, absolutely not. Non-retaliation, full stop.
He must have known how counterintuitive that was.
Oh, he knew. He explicitly said something like, few people believe this or ever will believe this, and between those who do and those who don't, there can be no common ground. He understood it was a fundamental dividing line in ethics.
Did this incredibly high-minded principle ever actually, impact real-world politics?
Amazingly, yes. There's a powerful example. The Mytilene crisis in 427 BC.
What happened there?
Mytilene, a city allied with Athens, rebelled. The Athenian assembly, absolutely furious, held a vote. and they voted democratically to execute all the adult men in Mytilene and enslave the women and children.
Good grief. Collective punishment on a massive scale.
Exactly. Utter retribution.
Right.
But the very next day, sanity prevailed, or at least doubt crept in. They held another debate. A speaker named Diodorus argued against the massacre.
On what grounds?
Mostly practical grounds, arguing it wasn't in Athens' long-term interest, it was a bad strategy. But tucked into his speech was this clearly Socratean idea. He argued it was actually better for Athens to suffer the wrong of the rebellion than to commit a greater wrong by unjustly destroying thousands of people.
Wow. So Socrates' principle that it's better to suffer wrong than to do wrong actually influenced a major political decision.
It appears so. That ethical argument, likely circulating from Socrates, played a role in reversing the decree and saving countless lives. Philosophy in action.
That's incredible. Before we get to his own end, there's one other area where his views seem really ahead of his time.
You mean regarding women?
Exactly. He seems to have held some quite progressive views for ancient Athens.
He really did. We know he was influenced by intelligent women. He speaks of Diotima of Mantinea as his instructor in matters of love, and Aspasia, Pericles' brilliant partner, was part of his intellectual circle.
So he learned from women.
And he seemed to genuinely believe women possessed the same intellectual capacity as men. He argued they should receive a full education to prepare them for responsible roles in society. That was radical stuff back then.
Okay, so let's move towards the end of his life. The context is crucial here. Athens had just lost the long Peloponnesian War.
Yes, a devastating defeat. The city was crushed, demoralized, and they just endured the horrific, bloody rule of the 30 tyrants.
A really dark period.
And in that atmosphere of fear, anger, and recrimination, Athens was looking for someone to blame, a scapegoat.
And Socrates, unfortunately, fit the bill.
He became the target, largely through guilt by association. Some of his former associates were now deeply hated figures.
Like Alcibiades the traitor.
Yes, and Critias, one of the most brutal of the 30 tyrants, who was also, incidentally, Plato's cousin. Critias had actually tried to silence Socrates during the tyranny, but that didn't matter later. People remember the association.
They couldn't punish Alcibiades or Critias directly?
Right, they were gone, so they went after Socrates. The charges brought against him sound almost timeless in their vagueness.
What were they officially?
Two main counts. Not worshiping the gods whom the state worships, essentially impiety and corrupting the young.
And his defense? Well, it wasn't exactly designed to win friends, was it?
Not in the slightest. He was completely uncompromising. He refused to grovel, refused to promise he'd stop philosophizing or questioning people. He even recounted the oracle's prophecy about his wisdom, which probably didn't help.
And then came the sentencing phase. After being found guilty, he had to propose an alternative punishment to death.
And this is where his irony perhaps went too far for the jury. He seriously proposed that as his punishment, he should be honored like an Olympic champion.
How?
By being given free meals for life in the Prytaneum, the city's public hall, essentially rewarded for his service to Athens. After that, he suggested a tiny fine, 1 mina, almost an afterthought.
That must have seemed like a massive insult to the court.
It absolutely did. That perceived arrogance, that lack of seriousness in the face of a guilty verdict, it backfired spectacularly. The vote for the death penalty increased significantly on the second ballot. He was condemned 360 votes to 140.
But even then, facing death, he had a chance to escape, didn't he?
He did. He was imprisoned for about 30 days while a sacred Athenian ship was away on a mission. Executions couldn't happen during that time. His friend Crito came to him with a fully arranged escape plan. Bribes paid, escape route ready.
Easy way out.
But Socrates refused. His argument, laid out in the Crito dialogue, is profound. He said he lived his entire life under the laws of Athens, benefiting from them. To now break those laws, even to save his own life from an unjust sentence, would be a greater injustice. It would be harming the city, harming the very concept of law he respected.
Choosing to obey an unjust verdict to uphold the principle of law itself.
Its philosophy lived out to the absolute end. He chose consistency with his principles over life itself.
And his final moments, how did he spend them?
Discussing philosophy naturally. Talking calmly with his friends about the immortality of the soul, completely serene as he prepared to drink the hemlock.
Right up to the very last words.
Which were, fittingly, another piece of Socratic irony. He supposedly turned to Crito and said, "Crito, we ought to offer a cock to Asclepius. Do so, and don't forget."
Asclepius, the god of healing. Why a sacrifice to him?
The common interpretation is he was thanking the god for healing him from the sickness of life itself. Death was the cure, the safe transit into whatever came next. A final philosophical joke.
What an extraordinary end to an extraordinary life. When you boil it down, his legacy feels immense, doesn't it?
Absolutely permanent. He fundamentally shifted philosophy's focus to ethics, to how we should live. He brought it down from the skies, as Cicero later said, and into the human heart. And he grounded morality in that uncompromising refusal to do wrong.
And that challenge he laid down, the unexamined life is not worth living. That feels intensely relevant for you, for everyone listening today.
It really does. It's a direct command, isn't it? Use his method, the Elenchus, on yourself. Question your own beliefs. Define your terms. Don't just accept things because they're commonly believed. Know thyself rigorously.
And perhaps the most powerful takeaway is seeing how that rigorous life culminated in such incredible courage at the end. That composure in facing death wasn't accidental.
No, it was earned. It was the natural result of a life lived according to principle. Which leaves us with a final thought to consider. Maybe. If living virtuously grants that kind of deep courage and peace, what compromises are we making in our own lives right now? What fears are we holding on to because we haven't fully examined our own principles? It makes you wonder about our own potential for that kind of moral heroism